it's heating up even more. It's only been another hour, so doused myself with some water, and that's going to help me stay cool. There was a legendary Grand Canyon hiker named Harvey Butchert. It's a great book just written on him called Grand Obsession. And Harvey Butchert was a mathematics professor here in Flagstaff, Northern Arizona University. And he became obsessed with the Grand Canyon. So obsessed that he would spend most of his free time and his weekends there hiking, and not on the trail, not on the main trails that all the tourists go on. I mean, he would navigate and find his own routes, a lot of old Anasazi trails, sheep trails, and that kind of thing. He was out in the middle of nowhere. And one thing he did to help himself adapt more to the heat of the inner canyon, because the Grand Canyon, once you're inside, it's like Phoenix. It can be 115 degrees down there, even though you're up on top in the pines on the rim looking down. You're at 7,000 feet there. It can be 85, 90 degrees, but the people, those little ants you see down at the bottom, hiking, riding the mules, they're in 110, 115 degree heat. So how do you acclimate to the desert heat if you don't live in it full time? Because it takes 5 to 14 days of living in the heat full time before you're truly acclimated to the heat. And by that, I don't mean going from your air-conditioned car to your air-conditioned office to your air-conditioned house if you live in Phoenix or Vegas. You gotta be living in the heat round the clock. So one thing Harvey did to overcome heat stress was to bring a wet cotton shirt with him. He'd put that, get it soaking wet, put it in a trash bag in his pack, and then go hiking in the canyon. And when he was done hiking, or after he was, gonna take a break here after about an hour, and he was heated up, he'd take his dried out cotton shirt off him that he had soaked earlier before leaving his vehicle. Once that dried out, he'd take it off, put his wet cotton t-shirt on from his pack, and that would help him stay cool for the next hour or so. Sometimes they become bone dry in about 30 minutes in that kind of heat. And he'd do this all day long as he hiked. Now, a friend of mine told me about this, and I started using it on trips a few years ago. And if I'm not living in the heat full time, if I'm coming and going, I'm teaching courses in different parts of the country or up in Canada, whatever, coming and going, and I lose my acclimation to the heat for a while, then I will do that. I'll have an extra t-shirt with me, or if I have extra water, I'll just pour it over me, and that'll help with being acclimated. Anyway, how did I get on all that? That doesn't have anything to do with this shelter here. I'm here to talk about this shelter. So I wanted to just point this out. It ties in with shelters. This is a shelter made out of juniper and pinon pine that a student made in a knife-only course a few months ago in the summer, in July, when it was hot out here. About 110 during the day, and it was cooling off to about 80, 85 at night, so not exactly life-threatening during the night, that is. So, got a nice shelter here made out of a really solid branch of pinon pine. This is rock solid, still filled with sap. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to break. If it should, for some reason, rain, or even if it's wintertime, snow in the middle of the night, it's not going to break. Got it nestled in a nice juniper tree for additional coverage and shade and shelter. And the back of the shelter is to the prevailing wind. This is a shelter that's not going to have a fire with it, so we don't have to worry about aligning the shelter and the fire with the prevailing wind and all that kind of stuff. This is just to sleep in and get out of the wind and sun. But notice the thick layer of duff. This is all juniper duff here, and these juniper trees and pinon trees have about a foot of duff, 6 inches to a foot of duff, depending on how old they are. And that duff is natural insulation. I mentioned in a previous episode about not sleeping on the bare ground, not sitting on the bare ground because it's so hot. So he built about a foot of duff here to sleep on top of and burrowed into, and this gives you a really good night of sleep here. Very comfortable. So rock solid shelter. This thing took about I want to say about 2 hours to make or so. We were breaking it up with different talks on other topics like fire making and this and that. So he didn't work on it solid, but I'd say about 2 hours it took to make this particular shelter. Again, this is worst case scenario. You forgot your tarp, you lost your gear, you don't have that stuff with you for some reason, you didn't come prepared, and you've got to resort to using a natural shelter. Remember the 5 W's we talked about in a previous episode, and then look for an area where you can build it where there's already some existing shade and shelter.